Hi everyone, this is Wayne Dorr. I'm at Estrella Mountain Regional Park near Goodyear, Arizona. It is April 11th, 2020. I'm recording this video because I was reminded at work about something that happened 10 years ago. On April 10th, 2010, my grandmother, it was Easter Sunday, my grandmother had a stroke and I ended up calling 911. She went to the hospital and then became an invalid for about 2 years, and she finally passed away at the beginning of 2013. And this event set me on a course where by 2012, I found myself isolated similarly to the way that the whole world is experiencing isolation with the coronavirus. I look at this situation with the coronavirus with a new perspective because I've already faced about a year's worth of isolation. When I was in Gardner, about 2012, I had received some money because of someone's passing, and so because of that, I went on a trip to Angola, and then after that I was going to try to get a job in Bozeman, but I never found a job that would get me enough money that I could live on my own. So I was basically stuck in Gardner trying to get out of there while I knew that Grandma's health was ailing and I needed to get out of there as quickly as I could. I felt like things were falling out beneath me and nothing was working. And in 2012, I found just a lot of no answers, just nothing working out. And by 2013, I was starting to, I became suicidal. I actually became suicidal, and I didn't know what to do. I was a Christian and I was facing suicidal thoughts. I look back on that period of time with a different perspective now. And even though that God delivered me from those suicidal thoughts, I mean, literally, like one day they were there, and the next day God had miraculously taken those thoughts away from me. Even though that I was in that position, and even though I never found any answers back then, and I felt like there wasn't really any way I could get out of this situation, and I eventually had to have some help from my aunt in order to get out of Montana altogether. I find that this situation is very similar to a lot of people in the world, where they feel like the coronavirus has them isolated. They can't get out of where they're at. There's no jobs to be had. There's a lot of hopelessness. All they can do is stay inside their house and wait for the government to say, now you can come back out. I look at this now with a sense of hope that even though that it sometimes seems like God doesn't give answers. And you know, today is Saturday, the day before Easter. This is the day that all the disciples thought that Jesus was dead, their Messiah was dead, and that there was absolutely no hope. There was no coming back from this. There wasn't anything that they were going to be able to do. I see this situation as being like that for a lot of people today, where they feel that there are no answers and there's no hope. They don't know how to make ends meet, and they literally can't because they're stuck at home. They can't find work because, you know, there are just no jobs to be had. And you know, the jobs that are out there, there's an amount of risk that goes along with it. Having a job myself, I don't face that same situation right now, but I look back at what I experienced back in 2012 and 2013 and realize a lot of people are probably feeling the same way that I did back then. And what I would say is that there is hope. That even though that there are no answers today, that doesn't mean that there's going to be no answers forever. That the things that we experience today, God means for our good and not for our bad. And that if we put our hope in Him, He can deliver us out of all these things. If you can't make the bills, then ask God to help you fix this. You know, it may not come the way that you want. It may not come in the timing that you feel like you need to have it. It may be a late payment for your rent, or it might be something. But God will fix those things for you. And although I don't really have all the answers that I was really looking for back then, even still today, I don't look at it as fatalistically as I did back then. Back then I looked at God as noticing the things that happened in my life, and even though that I loved him, he didn't really do anything about it and seemed to not care, or didn't want to do anything about it. And today I look at it quite differently. I look at it that God does care, and he's trying to help us through this situation because he wants to make us better. He wants to do something in our lives that we just don't see we don't see with our eyes. And if you can give yourself over to God, to even trust him with the bills, and to trust him in isolation whenever you feel completely down and you feel like that there's just no way that you can get out of this circumstance and that everything is just swirling down the toilet, God can give you answers in ways that you never really expected. When you come out of this, you will find that you're in a far better position than you were before. It took me until I got to Arizona before I really started finding a few answers. I was completely by myself. I didn't even have a family really when I was in 2012 and 2013. I was living by myself and facing suicide. I was telling one person about how I was feeling and telling them about the things that were going on in my head. And they even told me that they didn't want to hear anything negative from me anymore. And it hurt me to the core. And I don't wish that for anybody else either. I hope that if you do find people that are facing suicide because of the coronavirus today, that you can say, let me listen to you. And even though that you don't have any answers either, sometimes just listening makes a big difference for that individual. Give them that hope that even though that there aren't any answers right now, that they don't have what they need in their hand, that if they trust in God and if they ask him for all that they need, he will provide it very gladly. It may not be when they really want him to do it, but he will provide it. That our benefits are not just after the grave. Our benefits are all around us. I mean, I look around. I'm in Arizona and it's a beautiful day. It's absolutely gorgeous out here. Oh, that's a napkin. I was eating out here. And we don't have to wonder what God is actually thinking about us. He's thinking good things about us. And that there is going to be an Easter Sunday. There is going to be a resurrection. That even though that we see that there's nothing but dead answers for us right now, that God has provided the answer before we were even born. And we do have hope. Just grab onto that and know that he cares for you. He cares for you.